Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about creativity in fighting games and kind of what it's like to feel creativity in your play. This actually started with a question on my ask.fm. I'm going to start by just reading the question and then reading what I wrote and then kind of expanding on it a little bit. So, I've been playing Super Turbo lately, but I don't feel attracted to anybody because I feel like a lot of Super Turbo is restricted to your character, and there isn't a lot of room for creativity for characters and matchups, and everything feels set in stone in terms of matchups. And my answer is, well, Super Turbo came out 21 years ago, and many of the people playing it literally haven't stopped since then. I wouldn't say that there's no room for creativity, but you do have 21 years of dedicated people playing and learning to catch up on before you get to do something new. And you have fewer tools relative to newer games to do that something new. But I think that's the beauty of Super Turbo. I love it because all the information needed to learn any given matchup is out there. And anyone who wants to can sit down and learn it and get on Fightcade and start wrecking shop. The discovery phase of a new fighting game is fun, but I don't feel like we're really playing a fighting game until both players in a match understand the game the way that Super Turbo players understand Super Turbo. You can look at a game in terms of kind of a certain predictable cycle, a life cycle, a competitive life cycle. The first is usually from release. I would say it's what I call the discovery phase, and there it's a new game or relatively new. The possibility space is not that well explored. And so creativity there lies mostly in finding out what's really good or what's really cool or what's really fun, where it's stuff that no one else is doing, right? Or stuff that no one else has found yet, or maybe other people have found it, but they haven't popularized it, right? The creativity there is largely in experimenting with new stuff and being able to identify what's really good faster than other people. But that state usually doesn't last for very long. And that state does depend in part on how much stuff is in the game. So ST, like when you look at Super Turbo as a game, just fundamentally there's less stuff to do in that game. There are fewer characters, fewer moves, fewer there's no like grooves or system options or whatever. That isn't to say there's a lot of stuff that you can learn, but the amount of discoverable content in that game is significantly smaller than a Marvel 2 or a CBS 2. Right? So it stands to reason that the discovery phase there is significantly shorter. So if discovery is the first phase, and a lot of people feel creative there, the refinement stage is what I call the second. The second phase of a game's competitive life cycle. And in the refinement state, you pretty much have like 90% of everything kind of, the rough metagame in terms of tiers and strategies and what people choose. You have a lot of that mapped out already. So for the most part, the refinement stage is about kind of, now that you have stuff mapped out, right, and you have the rough space of the game kind of understood, it's about drilling in a little bit deeper, right? So it's about looking at that map and thinking, okay, maybe there's something that I feel like is better than most people give it credit for, and it's not unknown, but it's definitely less respected. So the players who tend to excel in the second phase, I think it's like we see it again in Marvel 3. It's easy to look at folks like Chris G, Flux, and Flocker as players who excel based off of their experience and their execution and their willingness to go out and just level up, right? Their dedication to the craft. And the creativity there is more in kind of picking, like, choosing the right team and getting it to rock with you and take you all the way to finals or whatever, right? So Chris G was not the first Mordoom player. Flux and Flocker were not the first Zero players, and they weren't the players who really like invented a lot of stuff you do with Zero, but they were the ones that kind of put him on the map. The refinement stage is largely about like you look at the tools that other people have kind of brought to the line, brought to the surface, and you make your bets and you think, okay, I think this is actually the good one, right? So it's more in terms of the creativity is in analyzing a somewhat known space and figuring out how to use your time to kind of research the niche counter stuff, or assembling the right components from known strategies to and thinking, oh, this is what I can do better than anyone else, right? It's a different kind of creativity. The third stage that I would point to in a competitive game's life cycle then is what I call the end game. And that is the state where I would argue that Super Turbo's in. So the end game state is when the game is probably like 99% mapped out, right? And I say 99% because it's kind of hard to know if we ever truly know, or if we ever truly know a fighting game. I'd say it's not really possible to solve a fighting game per se. But at the end game, creativity in the end game state is more about playing against the player, and your personality, the way you express it, is not just in terms of who you pick, but how you play them. But what people are realizing is that the way you play a character and the decisions you make while playing, any of the cast, like there are so many different options on what you can do and how you can use their tools to solve the problem of your opponents, who are also dedicated and have been playing for a long time, right? This is also, I think, this is where I place a lot of kind of just really, really great fighting game players. People like John Choi, people like Daigo, and even if you look at like Kazunoko, who just won Capcom Cup. These are all guys who, especially Choi and Daigo, they like it almost looks like they're playing the same game no matter what fighting game they're playing, and it's pretty scary. But it's because they've found characters that let them kind of reduce a fighting game down to its essence, right? And then for them, the game is a known quantity, right? And so the only question left is, how is the player that you're up against going to play, right? No longer is it necessarily a mismatch of I've got these tools and he's got these tools, so we'll see how the two overlap, and if my tools are better than his, then I win. It's more like I've got my tools which let me compensate for certain weaknesses and magnify certain strengths in myself, right, in my brain. So whoever I'm controlling in a fighting game is like a tool that my brain and my hands are controlling, and I want to pick a character that I think lets me learn the most about my opponent, or that lets me end it before before they can learn anything, or whatever, right? That's the state in which I personally find the most gratifying fighting game experiences are, because that's when I get to understand more about who you are, besides, you know how to deal with zero, or you don't know how to deal with zero, right? That said, it's that's not for everybody, and I think that's fine, right? So to circle back to kind of this original question, like, people find different things entertaining in fighting games. Some people just like playing a new game and seeing how it works, right? They like the exploration phase the most, and once they've explored, they'll look around and see, so I think this is the stuff that'll do really well, and think this is the stuff that'll do really well 3 years from now, or whatever. That's great. I don't actually have to do it myself. Some people are about that second phase, right, where it's you're not the day one tech video dude, but you're the guy who spends years on learning a matchup or on learning a character, and then wants to share that craft with other people, and that's pretty cool too, right? And then the end game state, it's almost like, this chess gets thrown around as an analogy, or as a comparison for all kinds of games too often. But the nice thing about chess is that all your pieces are on the board, and that's kind of how I feel about like fighting games in their end game state, is that there are no secrets in terms of what you can do. The only secrets are what you will do, right? And what your opponent will do. And that to me is the most fun part. If I play you and I beat you, I want to be able to beat you like 8 times out of 10, right? I don't want to just kind of trade games because I got lucky, or because we were kind of making, because I played some stuff that took you a while to adapt. I want both of us to know the matchup, because it's not fun to me if one person doesn't know the matchup. So yeah, with those 3 states, then like I think it's totally okay to like whatever you want. And also, like, I love Super Turbo, but I don't expect everyone to love Super Turbo, right? Because we all love different things about fighting games. To the original asker, whether you feel justified about feeling restricted in ST or not depends largely on kind of what you personally find gratifying in fighting games. And, if anything, I think it's learning how to play ST and then deciding it's not for you is one of those things where, like, it's a good experience, right? The one thing about playing ST is that it will make you better at pretty much every fighting game, just because you have to drill down and boil down the fundamentals. Like, I recommend playing ST for at least a couple weeks every year. But if you don't enjoy it, right? If you don't feel like you can be creative enough in it, like, odds are the game is older than you are. So, fact is, like, I think You just kind of got to find the stuff that you're into, and understand that about yourself, right? And then branch out if you want to branch out, or just figure out other kind of other ways to scratch that itch.